Hi, everybody. My
Okay.
name is Todd Scholl. I am the lead learner at the Center for Educator Wellness and Learning, a center created by the South Carolina Education Association. And we're here today to have a conversation with two students from Springhouse Community School, a really cool school that I was able to visit this past fall in the Floyd, Virginia area. And one of the things that we've been talking about on some of our live streams is issues around trans youth. And I noticed that a lot of adults are talking about this, whether it's on social media or in other forums, having conversations. And I don't see students being included in those conversations often. So I wanted to bring on some students to hear what they had to say about these issues. So if you would welcome Myron and Kai from Springhouse School. How are you doing today, guys?
Good. Good.
I appreciate you taking time to have this conversation with me. First of all, tell me a little bit about yourselves. We'll start with Myron.
Yeah. My name is Myron. My pronouns are he, him. I am a trans man. I've been out since I was 15 and I'm 18 now. Um, yeah, that's big stuff about me. Um, but also like I'm an artist and Kai's friend and a learner here. Yeah.
Okay, Kai.
I'm Kai. Um, is he, they pronouns. I am a mix of every gender, I guess. I've been through my like gender journey. For I think I first came out when I was like 13, and I'm 17 now. And I do a bunch of creative things. I play guitar, all sorts of that stuff.
So tell me, you hear these conversations, I'm sure. You watch the news, or you maybe if you've been on social media at all, you hear these conversations around transgender issues. As you listen to them as a young person, what are some of the thoughts that you have? What are some of the frustrations you have, or some of the areas where you're like, gosh, they keep saying this and that's not right? Like, what are some things you like? This is going to be targeted mostly at adults who are educators or in the education field. What would you want them to know? What are some things that we're not getting right?
Any thoughts?
Assuming, like with trans youth, assuming how they feel instead of taking the time to ask.
And how do you feel?
Not heard. I feel like in my experience, a lot of the times my voice isn't in the picture. And it can be simply solved by just asking, hey, how do you feel about this?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, for me, I agree with that kind of not heard feeling. I think it's really common for people to just think about the queer adults in our community, and not always take into consideration all of the young people that are trans and queer, and just like a lot of conversations around our experiences don't feel all that true to us sometimes. Like I've heard a lot of things about like sorry, I need to put all of my thoughts into words. Um, I hear a lot of conversations about how like trans youth are struggling, and we, like adults in the queer community, don't know what to do about all of the trans youth that are struggling with things like their family members and all of this stuff. But also I think there's like a lot of joy from young trans people that isn't always considered. Like I love being who I am, and I love being in community with queer people, and I love being like out and being proud of who I am. And those aspects of being young and queer aren't always considered in conversations, and oftentimes the only thing that is portrayed of young queer people is the suffering.
That's a really good point. I hadn't thought about that. Yeah, because they talk a lot about a lot of the the suicide rates of transgender youth and things like that, and the mental health issues. But that's kind of a deficit mindset. I think those are important things to discuss, because we have to figure out like why is that, and what is it about our culture that creates trauma for young trans students, or creates this disconnect or this feeling of being, like you mentioned earlier, being unheard, that leads to those kind of issues. Would you so I want to try to take this from a perspective of a person who doesn't know a lot, and I'm not a person who knows a ton. So I'm going to kind of just have this curious mindset about that I think some people might have who want to hear from you. How did you know, like, when did you discover that you were transgender, and what was that process like at what age did you start to think about that, and how did you know it? Because I think that in this discussion there's these adults who think that, well, you were just influenced by somebody, or somebody tried to indoctrinate you or pull you into this mindset, and it's not authentic, that it's there's so how would you describe that to an adult who doesn't understand, maybe because they're cisgender and they just always have been, and they can't understand how somebody could not be cisgender? How would you explain how that process was for you?
For me, it kind of started with realizing my sexuality before realizing my gender, where like I realized I was bisexual and I liked both girls and boys. But part of that was realizing that I didn't like boys the way that all the other girls I was around liked boys. I liked boys in the way boys like boys. And that was sort of a big part of my realization, is like I am not experiencing attraction the way that my friends are experiencing attraction, and the way that like all of my close female friends experienced attraction to men in a very specific way that I just couldn't relate to. And that was part of the realization for me. And then I started doing a lot of research. I looked online for a very long time, just trying to figure out like, what could this possibly mean? Why do I not relate to everyone else around me? And then I saw a lot of people talking about being trans online. And that kind of was like the little start of my realization. And also like when I was pretty young, one of my close friends, their cousin was trans, and I got to meet this trans person at a very young age. And like growing up and realizing how much I had in common with this person instead of all of the people that I thought I was supposed to relate to really helped me realize.
Yeah. How old were you, Myron, when you recognized that discrepancy between like what you thought sort of society was telling you who you should be attracted to or whatever, and then like waking up to the fact that, hey, I'm not, there's a difference here between what seems to be societal quote unquote norms? How
Yeah.
old?
I was, I think, 12 years old when I first started realizing that I didn't relate to the way other feminine people were presenting in society. And yeah, just pretty young.
How did that feel when you sensed that? Was it confusing? Was it stressful? How was that landing inside of you internally?
Yeah, at first it was really scary. Like being queer in general was really scary for me at first. Because I like growing up in Floyd, and in like sort of a rural place in Virginia, I didn't always feel like the most like I would be accepted by my peers and my family at first. Because like I overheard like mean comments about other queer people in our community when I was younger. And even about like the trans person I knew when I was younger, their family didn't treat them well. And kind of like at first there was a lot of fear, and then right after that fear there was a lot of excitement because it was like this realization of who I was and this understanding of like, oh, I don't have to be the way that I thought I had to be my whole life. I get to be this beautiful and new experience that I didn't even know was possible.
So I don't want to put words in your mouth, so please correct me if anything I say is not accurate. So first at 12, there was this sense that something's not aligning in the way that I'm seeing culturally, but then I'm discovering I don't have to
Mm-hmm.
that I can be authentically this who I am and not necessarily fit this sort of template, if you will, that I can. There's another template. I can be this authentic person and and feel this way without being in struggle with it, without feeling misaligned, like totally in the flow of that identity. Is that
Yeah, exactly.
So
Mm-hmm.
I think, and so the idea that there would be adults who would tell you that that's wrong, or that like they would criticize you or want to push you back into that template. How would that land on you? Like, what would that mean? Like for society not to accept that, or for your community not to accept that? How would that affect you?
Um, I would be like very upset if anyone tried to hold me back from my experiences. Because being trans feels like such a beautiful experience in a lot of ways. 'Cause it means that you get to be outside of a lot of society's standards for people. And being able to be outside of it and be able to reflect on it is something that I really enjoy doing, and something that it just feels so enlightening in a way that I didn't really know was going to be part of the experience when I first started realizing I was trans.
Thanks. Myron, you meant I'm sorry, Kai. Kai, you mentioned a journey that you went through. How was your journey maybe similar or different than Myron's?
I remember for I guess always little things like I didn't know why, but I wanted to have a boys' bathing suit, not a girls' bathing suit. And when looking back, it was a lot of things and that stacked up and like, oh, this makes so much sense now. Whereas then I didn't realize that like I didn't realize that what cis was, and I didn't really know what cis and trans were. I know at one point I was discovering about like being a trans man, and I wasn't ever shown that there's an in between. So I was like, oh, this makes sense. I'm a trans man. So I kind of made myself fit into the box of a trans man. And it took me a while to realize that this isn't really who I am. I am somewhere floating in the middle. I'm more gender fluid. But I learned about being trans before I learned about non-binary, or that kind of stuff. But so my experience was different, but I also relate to a lot of what Myron said.
When you hear there are people that I see in this kind of conversation, they'll say, listen, I mean, people of my generation and older grew up with what they thought was a clear idea of what a man and a woman was. And I think for a lot of people, my generation or older, and even some in the younger generation, they're just like, I don't get it. Like a man's a man, a woman's a woman. Like that's the way it's been for centuries. And, so this idea of like being non-binary or a trans woman, trans man, this is for some people really confusing, and they feel like it's almost like some kind of made up thing. Can you help people who maybe are of that mindset understand that this isn't some made up thing, that this is a very real thing that's happening to you internally? This is an identity that you're discovering, you're sorting through, you're figuring out. That isn't something that you went on, Instagram and saw something, hey, I'm going to try that. Like help people understand better, like the reality of how gender identity is much more diverse and not as black cut and dry, black and white as people like to make it out.
Yeah, like I said, when I was first learning about what being trans was, I wasn't learning about the non-binary aspect, or just that umbrella as a whole. And I didn't know why, but being a trans man felt almost the same way as being cis felt. Like neither really felt, they both felt uncomfortable. And being non-binary, I don't know what label fits me best. I just say I'm me. But I fall under the non-binary umbrella. And it's just what's most comfortable for me. I don't like being seen as a cis woman or a trans man, purely just because it doesn't feel comfortable and it doesn't feel right. And that's just who I am. And I might never figure out specifically like what box I fall under, but that's okay. I'm not sure if I want to. I just want to be me.
It's beautiful. Myron, what are your thoughts?
Yeah. In my experience, if people don't allow trans people to come out and be their authentic selves, then they will live a life that is duller than the one that they would otherwise. And because being a gender, like being perceived gender that you are not, feels very constricting. It feels like you're being put in like a dark room, just left alone to fend for yourself, basically. And then being able to authentically express ourselves through our gender really just opens this whole world of self-expression and identity that is so beautiful and so vibrant in a way that just couldn't happen without trans people.
Yeah. I think it would just, I wish that what my goal is, to create the kind of world where people do feel like they can connect with their authentic selves and express that, freely without feeling like there's judgment or that there needs to be some kind of constriction around it in certain circles, that they can just navigate the world, whether they're going to the grocery store, to school, or to a community event, and be who they are and not worry about how other people might perceive it. Can you talk a little bit about, because I was so impressed with the culture at Springhouse, and I spoke with another student there who expressed just how welcomed he felt. Can you talk about Springhouse and what Springhouse has done to support you as students that has been effective, that's helped you through maybe some of the stresses around this, and that's helped you see, like, Myron, I love how you talk about, you keep coming back to like the beauty in it and celebrating the positive. How has Springhouse helped you in that regard?
Yeah, I think Springhouse is really big on celebrating the positives of being queer. We have a very like big queer community at Springhouse, so there's lots of like acceptance of us because we're basically the majority here. And like every time we introduce ourselves with our name and pronouns, and we always use our preferred names. And like things like that just really make it such a significantly more accepting community. And like when I first came to Springhouse, part of like my interview to get into Springhouse was talking about me being trans. And at first I was really scared that I wouldn't be accepted, and immediately one of the staff members gave me a hug. And was just like, we've had other trans people here, you're totally welcome in this community. And then along with those things, like students make an effort to visibly show that this is an accepting community. Like a project I worked on a couple of years ago was making a sign for our entranceway that talks about how Springhouse is a welcoming and open community despite your sexuality or gender identity. And that's like the first thing you see when you walk into Springhouse.
Yeah, I think I noticed that. I think I took a picture of it actually.
Yeah.
Kai?
Before Springhouse, I had been in public school my entire life. I think I'm the student here with the most public school experience. And it was a very different transition. I experienced things like I didn't know that I could be loved in this way, and I didn't know that I could be accepted in this way. I didn't know it was possible. And then I came to Springhouse, and like Myron, they gave me a hug, and I was like, whoa, what's happening here? And little things like pronouns make a really big difference, especially to visitors, so that it's established, hey, you're welcome, no matter who you are. I found that really welcoming when I first came here. And I had never seen anything like that in public school or the outer world. And I didn't know that that kind of love and acceptance existed. And when I did experience it, I was blown away by how welcoming this community is.
You both mentioned pronouns, and so I wanted to bring that up. I've heard of educators saying, oh, I'm not going to call them that. Why is it important for those that are around you to use the pronouns that affirm your gender identity? Why is that so important to you?
For me, it's because if people don't use the correct pronouns for me, it feels like they're putting me in a box that I've already told them I don't fit in. And it feels like just fully not listening to anything I've told them. And is very much like it goes against all of my ability to be perceived as a person. It goes against like my humanity to use the wrong pronouns for me. Because my gender is fully tied to me as a person.
Kai, do you have anything to add to that?
For me, when somebody uses my preferred pronouns, that's how I know that they're a welcoming person and that they accept me. And for other people, it's how I tell someone, hey, like, I respect you for who you are and I celebrate that. And I will love you, like, no matter who you are. And for me, that's a way of stating that. And I find that really important.
I want to talk about the community that you're in too, because I know that the school's a really special place, and the community of Floyd. You know, both of you have talked about that a little bit, but talk about the Floyd community in general, or the sort of the area where you live. What are some of the pros and cons of that community? How have they helped you feel welcomed, and maybe what are some things that they need to work on?
Floyd kind of it's an interesting place because it has just people from every possible opinion and every possible like mindset and life experience. So it's like, it's either like one side of the group of people here are very accepting and the other side just is not willing to ever believe I exist. And that's just, it's interesting being in a small town like Floyd, where it's like so many people love and embrace my identity, but also so many people like right across the street hate that I exist.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The last question I have for both of you is, you can give advice to someone who's 11, 12 years old and they're sorting through this in their mind, trying to figure out who they are. What's some advice that you would give to that young person?
My advice is to remember that even if no one else accepts you, you're still a beautiful and wonderful person. And other people's acceptance doesn't quantify your validity as a person.
Beautiful. Kai?
I would say don't be afraid to express. It can be very powerful just by wearing a men's shirt instead of a woman's shirt. Like those, that type of thing. It can be really powerful, a very powerful feeling, and just don't be afraid to explore.
Thanks to both of you for your time. I hope I get a chance to come there and visit again soon. And I appreciate you both having the courage to have this conversation. And if there's anything I can do to support you or anything else that you want to collaborate on, let me know. But thanks to H, who helped organize this, and thanks to both Myron and Kai for your thoughts and time today. Have a great rest of your day.
You too.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.